Good day. After intense discussion and claims of much debate on the issue within the US administration, finally confirmed that it is indeed going to supply HIMARS missiles or multiple rocket launch systems to Ukraine. The total number which are going to be supplied by the United States is 4, making up one battery, but it seems that the United States is not going to be alone in supplying these multiple launch rocket systems. It seems that Germany and Britain are also committing to supplying a battery each, in which case, if the total number promised is indeed supplied, and that's far from certain, then the total number of these systems which Ukraine will receive will be around 12. Now, despite claims that have been made, that is nowhere near enough to change the situation on the battlefield. 12 multiple rocket launch systems is not an insignificant force, but it is far less than the total number of multiple rocket launch systems that Ukraine possessed at the start of the war, and which the Russians have already destroyed. Now, there's been various claims made that the American HIMARS system is more accurate than the Russian systems, the equivalent Russian system, which is the Smerch. The Russians also have a system called Tornado, which apparently is even more modern and perhaps more effective. I've seen suggestions that this assumption that the American HIMARS system is more accurate than the Russian system. I've seen claims that this is wrong. As always, I'm not in a position to debate the point. I don't have the degree of technological knowledge or understanding of weapon systems to be able to come to a value judgment as to which system is more accurate or better. What I would say is that it's clear that the system has been the system that's been delivered or which is going to be delivered to Ukraine does not have the ATACMS long-range 300-kilometer system. The longest range rocket that it is supplied with has a range of about 70 kilometers. And we're told that this is double the range of the M777 howitzers with which Ukraine was previously supplied. Now, can I say something about that? Firstly, we were getting all kinds of extraordinary claims about the range of the M777 howitzers. And I've said on many occasions in many programs that the howitzers are able, in theory, to achieve these very long ranges with special ammunition, Excalibur rounds rather, which, however, depend on GPS tracking, but that there are problems, that the Russians have been jamming the GPS signals in Ukraine, which might make the Excaliburs difficult to use, and besides, the Excalibur rounds are expensive, and I didn't think that it was likely that many of these Excalibur rounds would be supplied. Now, it seems that is the case. If it's true that Ukrainian held M777 howitzers have a range of around 35 kilometers, it seems that this is indeed the case, and it seems that on that basis, the assumption many people have had that the US supplied, the Western supplied artillery to Ukraine would outrange the Russian artillery, well, it seems that's almost certainly wrong. And there is, in fact, good reason to think that the US has itself decided that the M777 howitzer deliveries to Ukraine have been something of a failure, that they've not achieved what the United States hoped they would achieve. I say that because there's quite a lot of evidence that quite a few of these things have been destroyed, and in one case at least, one of them has been captured. But regardless of that, the arms package of which these HIMARS systems is a part, these 4 HIMARS systems is a part, do not include any more deliveries of M777 howitzers. Perhaps even more important, they also provide for only 15,000 rounds of 155mm ammunition for these howitzers. That strongly suggests to me, given the speed of use of ammunition in this war, the Russians are said to launch around 500,000 rounds of artillery ammunition every day over the course of this fighting. 15,000 obviously is an insignificant amount compared to that. Well, given that so little ammunition is being supplied, 150mm ammunition is being supplied to Ukraine as part of this arms package, I can't help but think that there's a quiet acceptance in Washington that the M777 howitzer deliveries have proved a failure. What about the HIMARS? As I said, 12 are not going to change the battle. The US could supply more, but there are very significant logistical difficulties, and I'm not going to go over what those are. Jacob Dreisen has already explained that these things absorb vast amounts of ammunition, and that the logistical burden of keeping these these systems, these HIMARS systems, in constant supply would create insuperable, impractical challenges. Anyway, there we are. Going back to that arms package, I'm going to read out the full extent of it. It's worth $700. So it consists of 5 counter-artillery radar systems, 2 air surveillance radars, 1,000 javelins and 50 command launch units. Now, I would say the Javelin has not been a great success in the war, and it's interesting that the United States is continuing to send large numbers of these to Ukraine. But anyway, 6,000 anti-armor weapons. I wonder what that means exactly. Probably a wide range of different weapon systems. But at the moment, anti-armor doesn't seem to be doing very much. Then there's the 15,000 rounds, artillery rounds, 150mm artillery rounds that I talked about. 4 Mi-17 helicopters. These are Russian-built helicopters sold by Russia to the United States for use by the Afghan army in Afghanistan, the army of the Afghan government which collapsed last year. Just 4 of these, then 15 tactical vehicles and spare parts and equipment. It's the least impressive arms package that the United States has put together over the course of this war, if you disregard these 4 HIMARS systems. The rest of it suggests or appears to confirm the point I've already been making, which is that behind all the rhetoric, behind all the bluster, the United States is starting to walk away from long-term military commitments to Ukraine. Note that many of the things that we've been talked about earlier in the war, the crisis in Moldova, in Transnistria, that seems to have ebbed. The advances of Polish troops into Ukraine, that seems to have ebbed also. I can't help but get the sense that some powerful people in Washington are gradually coming round to the view that this war has gone as far as it can. Meanwhile, I'm now starting to read articles in the media like this, and this has appeared in The Guardian, and this relates to the economic war. And it's by Larry Elliott, who is The Guardian's economics editor, and he says this. The title of the article is "Russia is winning the economic war and Putin is no closer to withdrawing troops." And it then goes on to say, and it's a long article, I'm not going to read it, but it then goes on to say that, in fact, Western attempts to destroy the Russian economy have proved a failure. The Russians are still there, they're still going. Doesn't look as if Russia is going to be defeated in Ukraine, and the article finishes with these words: Putin is not going to surrender unconditionally, and the potential for severe collateral damage from the economic war is obvious. Falling living standards in developed countries, that means the West, famine, food riots, and a debt crisis in the developing world. The atrocities committed by Russian troops mean compromising with the Kremlin is currently hard to swallow. But economic reality suggests only one thing: sooner or later, a deal will be struck. Why not sooner rather than later? Why not acknowledge that the military situation in Ukraine is going badly wrong? There's been confirmation from the British Ministry of Defence that Russia now controls nearly all of Severodonetsk. There was more reports yesterday and early this morning of more settlements and towns in Donbass slipping under Russian control. There was a report that a town called Svyatogorsk is now in the process of being stormed by the Russian troops. And Slavyansk and Kramatorsk were the major remaining grouping of Ukrainian troops in Donbass, is now well within range of Russian artillery. So the situation in Donbass is going badly wrong. The situation on the Kharkiv front, where that great Ukrainian counteroffensive of a few weeks ago was supposedly sweeping all before it, that is also going badly wrong. The Russians are pushing the Ukrainians back in Kharkiv region, all the way back to Kharkiv. They're once more well within artillery range of Kharkiv, and there's even some reports that there's actually a Russian build-up in the area. And Zelensky and his officials continue to claim advances in Kherson region. I'm not able to confirm exactly what is going on there, but my feeling is that whatever gains Ukraine achieves in Kherson region will prove every bit as ephemeral and as costly as the Ukrainian gains in northeast of Kharkiv. So the military situation is going badly wrong. The HIMARS deliveries isn't going to change anything. And now we're seeing articles starting to appear in the British media and in the Western media about how the economic war is being lost. Russia, just to repeat again, Larry Elliott's article, Russia is winning the economic war. So why delay? Why experience all the things that Larry Elliott is talking about? To repeat again his words: falling living standards in developing countries, famine, food riots, and a debt crisis in the developing world. The Russians, by the way, are about to receive the Secretary General of the African Union. He's flying to Moscow. He's going to meet Putin himself, apparently. There's apparently a Russia-Africa summit in preparation. The African states clearly are looking to Moscow for the food supplies they need. I suspect there will be discussions in Moscow over the next few weeks about setting up a special payment mechanism for the African states to be able to buy Russian food and that Russian grain, and that of course will further accelerate the trend towards the internationalization of the ruble, because it is the ruble ultimately that will be the centerpiece of all of this. And in the meantime, the Russians are now coming up with a scheme to pay their American bondholders, the people who bought Russian sovereign debt in the United States, who the US government is trying to block Russian payments to, even though these are American citizens and American companies and American funds. The Russians are now suggesting that these bondholders open corresponding accounts in Russian banks, that they open a dollar account and a ruble account. The Russians will pay rubles into the ruble account held by these bondholders. The rubles will then be converted by the bank, presumably Gazprom Bank, into dollars, paid by Gazprom Bank into the dollar account, and that will then go to the bondholders, thereby preventing a default. I don't see why the bondholders would not agree to this. The United States authorities could tell the bondholders that if they agree to that kind of Russian proposal, they'll be breaking US law, they'll be breaching the sanctions. But in that case, it seems to me that the bondholders become even more likely eventually to bring legal claims against the US authorities for stopping Russian payments to the bondholders. By the way, I have to say that I find this fixation that the US authorities seem to have on getting some kind of declaration that Russia is in default really very, very bizarre, given that no serious market player is really going to think that the Russians have defaulted on their financial obligations either because of a inability to pay debt, in other words, an insolvency, or because of an unwillingness to pay. So there we are. We're losing on the economic front. Ukraine is losing on the military front. Weapon systems that we're sending to Ukraine are not going to change the military balance. It looks, in fact, if you unravel this particular military package, that the military aid Ukraine is getting is being quietly dialed down. So why not do what Larry Elliott proposes now? Maybe cut hard to swallow, just quoting again Larry Elliott's words, but economic reality suggests only one thing: sooner or later a deal will be struck. Let's strike that deal now. Let's have the leaders of the West finally make that collective decision to telephone Mr. Zelensky and tell him to sit down with the Russians. Perhaps they should telephone and speak to Putin himself and tell him, look, this has gone as far as it can go. Let's do that deal. Now, undoubtedly, the terms will be much tougher than they would have been if, say, the Western powers before the start of the war had agreed that Ukraine would never join NATO and had agreed that Ukraine must implement its side of the Minsk II agreement. It'll be tougher than what the Ukrainians were saying they might be prepared to do in the talks in Istanbul in March, which is to say, accept that they would never join NATO and accept that any legal guarantees, any security guarantees would not cover Donbass or Crimea, thereby implicitly recognizing that Crimea and Donbass have been lost to Ukraine. But I can't see that delaying any further is going to improve either the West's or Ukraine's stance in negotiations, which even President Biden, in that op-ed which I discussed in my previous video, now recognizes is the way in which this war is going to end. So, given that everybody accepts, everybody rationally understands that economic reality, and by the way, military reality, suggests that only one thing, that sooner or later a deal will be struck. Why wait? Why not strike it now, whilst there's still something of Ukraine left, and whilst the economic damage is, well, certainly less than it will otherwise be? Well, at the moment, nobody in the West seems prepared to be making that decision. Instead, we still remain prisoners of people like Robert Habeck, Germany's economics minister, who says that Russia's economy is collapsing. He provides no evidence of this, that everything there is supposedly falling apart. He provides no evidence of that either. And all we need to do is hold out a little longer. How much longer? The winter, a year, 2 years, 5, 10, and we will get our final victory over Putin and over Russia. Well, sooner or later, as Larry Elliott says, reality, I suppose, will dawn, and maybe we will, by that point, have a deal. But the way things are going, we're going to have an economic crisis first, or at least a serious recession in the United States, and quite possibly a crisis in Europe. And as for Ukraine, with every day that passes, it seems to me that Vladimir Putin will be the person who in the end will dictate the terms. Well, that's all from me today. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to you joining me again in future programs on this channel. Remember, you can also join us on the Duran, where I do programs with my colleague and friend Alex Christoforou. And of course, you can find us on our other platforms on Rumble and Locals. And if you're watching this program on Rumble, if you press the red maroon button, you can join us on Locals. It'll take you directly to our Locals homepage, where you can join our thriving community, and at that point you can participate in our Locals community. You can publish your own exclusive content there. You can follow the exclusive content that we are providing, Alex and I recently did a live stream on Locals. I usually do them every Wednesday, but not the Wednesday that's coming, because I'm going to be in the Peak District, away from London, and unfortunately I won't be around at that time. But I've also done recently a program about the impact of the sanctions on the Russian economy. You can read all of that. You can watch all of that, rather, on Locals. And of course, we're also present on other platforms like the new free speech platform SuperU and ODYSEE. We also have a thriving Telegram channel, and of course you can also support us if you wish via Patreon and Subscribestar. You can also benefit by going to our shop and buying the great things that you will find there. Our magic mugs, our famous mugs, our t-shirts, our hats, our hoodies, our sweatshirts, our bomber jackets, and all the rest. And of course, if you've liked this video, don't forget to press the like button and to check your subscription to this channel. Thank you for joining me again today. More from me soon, and have a very good day. Until then.